Folks, we're going to open the meeting here. We're waiting on one of our members to appear, so we have a quorum. So all we're doing right now is opening the meeting, and we're going to sit here and enjoy each other's company. So talks amongst yourselves.
Whine about pumpkin bread.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Everybody's got real quiet now. So what
What do you have left?
Hmm?
What do you have left? A couple of years?
yeah, really.
I think I'm gonna, I think I might quit at the end of next year.
25.
And then I'll have 18 months before I'm 65. But I was looking at it, even if Coke was
Sure, call it senior debate.
for 18,000, go ahead.
I mean, I'm already with, I'm all with
Be
the
done.
stuff.
Yeah.
What's Eve gonna do?
I don't know. She's there, she's still working. I just told her, I said, I'm just tired. I just don't want to do it anymore.
Well,
Can I? Yeah.
That's what I've gotten to. I've gotten to the point where I was telling a friend of mine, I said, I've never felt like I just didn't want to go in.
Yeah.
That's what I'm right now. I'd rather do almost anything.
Yeah.
He's in the parking lot.
It's just like, I've never felt that way.
No.
And part of it, I guess, in the old days, it was mine. So
Mhm.
you wanted to go in, you wanted to see your clients.
Yeah,
and all this.
right.
Now they're really not my clients.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to steer their attention to AAA so that they don't rely on me, so if I do disappear. Because that was the whole point. The whole point was, eventually I'm going to leave, so hopefully you will have someone to take care of you when I'm gone. So
Yeah.
let's get the process rolling. And apparently it's not an important thing. So
Yeah.
it's okay. So I tried.
Yeah. You know, and I don't mind the work. Work's easy.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I find myself Sunday afternoon.
They told us they weren't going to be here for their excuse.
I think I got a fever.
Yeah. And then going in is not a problem anymore. But I just don't enjoy it. I
Yep,
guess,
yep,
you know,
yep,
because
yep.
when I was at the bank, I was in charge. I knew everything that's going on. I was there. I'm just a guy who goes out and brings in business. That's all I do. I don't know the inner workings of anything else. And it's okay. And they treat me good because they've known me forever. I've known them forever. I'm the guy that gave them the loan to get their business started, and stuff like that. And they treat me like family. They really do treat me like family.
Bo's excuse.
Oh, yeah,
And
okay, I
that's
guess
why-
we did, yeah.
Scott
If I do
is
leave, I'll give
on
him
his
Yeah, I
a
guess
year's
we didn't
notice.
get that message. I
Yeah.
was calling him and I didn't
Oh,
realize
I'm
he
so
was- I didn't
sorry.
realize he was in the
Well, it was
hospital.
really
She
weird
said he was gonna be there
when
for
I went down.
Yeah, so
Sitting on
sorry.
it.
Yeah, okay.
And I get a
He
phone
did
call
say
on
that.
Social
Well,
Security.
actually, I think it's his call.
Who's got your death benefit check here? I said, my $256. And I go, yeah. And I go, isn't there anything else? And they go, how old are you? And I said, I'm 60. Oh, you qualify for survivor benefits. What? Really? They asked me a couple of questions about income, all kind of stuff. And of course, you're an S corporation. What would you like it to be? So they said, yeah, just bring a copy of the death certificate and your voided check down here.
Mm-hmm.
In 4 days, I'm getting
I
Social
don't
Security check.
because my
That's a
sister's
weird
not
feeling. The first time you
Really?
look in your bank account. Oh my God, this is crazy.
Wow.
So I've been doing this for 10 years. And the guy who told me says, what you do is you ride on hers until you hit 70. And you switch yours because yours is not maximized. So if you'd retire at normal age, you'd get 100%.
Right.
If you retire at 70, you get 138%.
Okay.
Well, no, that's a,
That's a
it's
plan.
already getting some. This is
Yeah.
better yet. And so yeah, so it's kind of been my deal. It's like, and it was, she dies, so all of her pension money shows up. She had triple her income life insurance, all that showed up.
Yep.
And not too long after that, we sold the farm, so another big chunk. For a while, it was raining cash.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is weird. This is really weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and I told somebody at the time, I said, they have no afterwards. Why are you? I go, I want to do something.
Yeah,
This isn't horrible. And there are times you want to kill some people, but overall, it's not.
Yeah,
And then, of course,
you've worked your whole life. You know, it's not like it's not like 10 years.
and I'm not doing, like when Lynn and I were together, we'd work until frickin' midnight and then be there at 7 o'clock the next morning, just crying those out over.
Yeah.
There he is.
There he is.
Having a day. How's everybody doing?
Good, how are you? So far, so good.
Well, I went across the bridge to come upstairs and
Let's scoot
couldn't get there either.
Yeah, yes, there you go.
So I was locked out.
Well, I was locked out, but I was lucky. I was always wave somebody down.
Apologies for making everybody wait.
That's all right, we had no place to go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a quorum here tonight, so if y'all please rise, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. All righty, if the clerk will call the roll, please.
Sam Schmidt,
Present.
Scott Steger,
Here.
Mark Bowling,
Here.
Maria Mills Bennett, Bobo Famey, Thomas Jordan.
Here. All right, so that gives us a quorum at least tonight. Consideration of the minutes from July 18th. Any questions, any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item number 4 here on the agenda. It's an application for Second Amendment to the River Yard Master Development Agreement and Conceptual Development Plans, case number PRZA-24-0006.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the Second Amendment to the River Yard Master Development Agreement, case number PRZA-24-0006.
Second for discussion.
Motion and a second. Mr. Berman. Hey, welcome. Haven't seen you in a while.
Tim Berman, Community Development. The proposal is an amendment to the River Yard Master Development Agreement and Conceptual Development Plan. This item was approved, the MDA was approved last year, and since that time, Bristol has continued to work on their project, cost estimates, refining the architecture, the site work, working on various things there. And during that time frame, we discovered a few minor cleanup items that needed to be addressed in the MDA, and we are bringing those forward here to go over them. So just what the proposed amendments are, going to go through them briefly here, and then we'll go over them a little bit more in detail then. We're going to look at the site layout to adjust the location of commercial and multifamily uses on the project. Parking to modify the parking requirement for the multifamily, and also state that all public parking will be located on the surface lots or parallel or street parking. Address the development requirements for the Art House property, drive-through requirements, allowed uses, and some minor cleanup to some of the text for consistency. First, this is what the current or the proposed concept plan is going to look like. As you can see, the area in yellow is where the multifamily and parking garage will be. The area in pink is where the commercial and mixed use will be, and the area in green is where the waterfront park is. As you can kind of see the comparison between 2023 plan and 24, there is about 1.4 acres added to commercial and mixed use, and it's, then we got a reduction in the overall multifamily. So what that means is the multifamily structure will most likely be smaller when it basically get the final design there, and this allows us more commercial area development for more commercial area and also more surface parking to serve that commercial area. The park that you can see up at the top there, the acreage for that has not changed. That was 1.5 to begin with and has remained consistent through the project then. The other aspect is that the River Yard Drive, which was not centered kind of between Ridgewood and Herbert Street, has now been centered there. That kind of pulling away kind of is better for in terms of traffic flow in that area, and that were the major changes to the concept plan then. As to this kind of shows us, again, this is a draft of what the master plan is still kind of work in progress, but kind of sees what the different green blobs that we showed you there, the pink, yellow, and green were. This kind of puts it into context of what those buildings might look like in context in the parking lot. Again, this is just a draft, so this is not the final version. But this gives you a little bit more context as to what it could be look like in terms of the parking spaces and stuff like that and layout of the possible buildings. And the other item discussed in the MDA is the parking ratio. The parking ratio that's approved for the multifamily uses is set at 1.3 spaces per unit. Since the further looking into the project and evaluating the number of one-bedroom units that will be built as part of this multifamily project, the request is to reduce that parking ratio to 1.25. Overall, when you look at what the anticipated unit count is for the building, that is essentially a reduction of about 13 spaces. But again, as they indicated, that their intent is to provide more one bedroom apartments than previously which lends itself to basically that parking ratio being requested. Then again, we looked at the ITE manual, which is basically the engineering manual that you kind of look to for guidelines, which is a standard used across the board here in terms of parking ratios for a multifamily project of this type, and their ratio again falls within the suggested range there, so like right in the middle of what that range is expected to be. The other cleanup item in there is that the MDA originally stated that 300 spaces were to be provided for public use. The amendment does not change that requirement. 300 spaces are still required. What the MDA states is that those spaces would be provided either surface parking or parallel or street parking. Then there would be no public spaces in the parking garage. They would all be on the surface or on the street. Again, it does not decrease the number that was originally proposed or in the original MDA, just more the location. Next is addressing a few of the outlying properties here from the main parcel. As you can see, the Art House property, which is at Herbert and Ridgewood, when we looked through that MDA, it was not very clear identified as to what those permitted uses were for that property or the development requirements. So what we've done is basically state that that parcel, when it is developed, will follow the requirements of the Ridgewood Development District for permitted uses, and will also follow all site requirements in the Land Development Code when it is developed. The other aspect that was added here was the drive-throughs. Currently in the Riverwalk Overlay District, drive-throughs are not permitted with projects. Here we basically indicated that one drive-through can be allowed on either the Art House property or the Dave's Pest Control property, which is the property at the north end here, right in front of the Tiki Docks parking lot then. So that gives them the flexibility in terms of when they are basically developing those properties. Most likely we anticipate those as multi-tenant buildings, the ability to put one drive-through on that development site then. The next item is related to permitted uses on the subject property. This is the major, kind of the 10, 11 acre property here. The original list of uses allowed for office space to be put on the ground floor and banks. One of the things that we're trying to promote on the part of the project to have the experiential retail, basically, restaurants, breweries, entertainment venues there, people that attract people there, not kind of like the office or bank uses then. So those uses have been removed as allowed uses, basically to kind of help bolster that list to be strictly experiential retail. We did allow offices as a possibility if there is a second floor to the commercial buildings, that you could have office on the second floor, but not on the first floor. And the last one, there was some cleanup items in terms of text, basically making sure everything was consistent between the concept plan and the MDA, and also adding a kind of just a time frame to the MDA in terms of when it would expire if the project does not move forward. Those are just standard things that are on all MDAs, and when we went back and looked at it, we needed to make sure that was clearly identified in this, and we took advantage when we were doing this amendment then. So again, the MDA amendment is just a number of kind of cleanup items there that have been discovered as we've been working with Bristol to kind of refine the project. And since we basically have got that point there, we've brought them forward as part of the MDA amendment then. So the applicant is here for any questions you might have, and I'm here to answer any questions you have. And staff is recommending approval of the MDA amendment.
Cool. Thank you, Tim. Start with Stan. Any questions for Tim?
Not right now.
Scott?
I just briefly, and I apologize, I was having some email problems before I was coming in. So there's a reduction in multifamily parking garage and courtyard and a slight increase in the Riverfront Park. How much of the open space is being reduced by this? Do you have an idea?
Well, I mean, in terms of the open space mainly on this project is really focused at that waterfront park. there.
Okay.
So that acreage is not changing at all.
So no significant change in that?
No,
It's just
it's-
really
it
a
was-
shift from residential
Residential to commercial there, and I think
Okay.
so basically more of the kind of the street parking area is getting expanded again to add on that then. So, but the
Certainly
key
can't hurt
focus
to have more
was
parking.
is don't decrease commercial and don't decrease waterfront park,
Mm-hmm.
which they did with this plan. So,
Perfect. That was my question.
Hey, you all set then? Scott?
Yes, thank you.
Mark?
The drive-throughs.
Yes.
Let's talk about those.
Can you put your mic on? Push the button.
There we go.
Thanks.
The drive-throughs. I know that several years ago, there was a strong deterrent for drive-throughs in this community, in this area. Now we're proposing to have two of them, one at the Art House and one at Dave's Pest Control. Okay? Why the change?
I think
Is
basically
that a Bristol request?
it was a request from Bristol then.
Okay.
But we have since when we've looked at this redevelopment area as a way to help redevelopment, what we find is basically that some basically drive-throughs are needed to help the redevelopment efforts. We approved one for Catfish Commons across the corner from there, and that led to kind of that being redeveloped with that project there. I
Okay.
think basically we know that we've got requirements in here to make sure that the drive-through is well designed. So it basically is not kind of the main focus.
And we're not
And
going to have
also,
a
too-
situation like we have at Dunkin' Donuts there
Right.
every morning.
We have requirements in the code that basically will make sure that basically that drive-through is not what you see at Dunkin' Donuts there currently there. It's not aesthetics appearance will not be an issue there. Drive-through function in terms of the parking lot and walkability, we're able to basically incorporate, make sure those items are preserved when we do the drive-throughs then. So I think when that original prohibited 25 years ago, we did not have the measures in the code to basically, kind of get a better design with the drive-through.
Okay.
Since then, our code has evolved, and we feel confident that they can have the ability to do a drive-through and still meet the needs of that area then.
All right. Since you're not going to allow banks, that kind of leads the drive-through to restaurants and coffee shops, basically.
Well, the bank was basically not permitted was just for the main parcel here.
Okay?
It was the banks then.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want you discriminating against us poor bankers. Come on now.
I think that was more basically like we're trying to get that to be more the entertainment area. So we want to kind of push the banks out to those out parcels. That would probably be better served there. The main focus was not having those types of uses in
Okay.
that main area. It'd be more entertainment focused then.
Okay. And I know the study you said with the one-bedroom apartments is less parking or less cars that are going to be parked there.
Right.
How accurate is that? I mean, I know that there's an awful lot of times when a one-bedroom apartment is occupied by two people with two cars as opposed to one person with one car.
But I think the study, when we looked at it too, an overview of what Bristol's projects have been in the past, which they provided us, basically showed that in terms of their renting and how they market these apartment complexes, usually those one-bedroom units are occupied, it might be by two people, but there is, one car
So one car.
on that then.
Okay.
I think the other thing too is that, which we're finding out too, is that, certain people have different work hours too. So, if someone lives in an apartment and they work nights, that car's not gonna be there at night then. So that, and then the person just basically works days, that car's not gonna be the days, so that kind of offsets that way then too. So that
Okay.
study kind of looked at the work schedule. Also too, there's a lot more alternative forms of getting around transportation in terms of ride share and stuff like that than that people are using that typically go with the mixed use development project.
Okay.
You good?
I'm not good, but I'm okay.
For now?
Yeah.
Good. I had questions about the parking too because, I was concerned about that. And really what it is, it's what I would call the peak hour ratio is people go to work and then they all come home, so the cars are all sitting there overnight. And that's when you really have to worry about how many parking spaces you have. But other studies that I looked at basically said the ITE numbers generally are way over reality, that the requirements they have are way over what reality is. So I felt pretty comfortable about that ratio.
And we're going from, the current requirement is 1.3. This is only going to 1.25 then. So it's a very minor reduction. And I think when we looked at what the anticipated number of units there, around 275, it results in 13 spaces
Yeah.
on there then.
So leave
Okay.
500ths of your car somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I had a question about the numbers though, because they're saying that the anticipated number of residential units will be dropped to like 275. But are we leaving the maximum number of units allowed at 460?
That's what the current MDA allowed then, the
Right.
460 then.
Yeah.
But basically with this proposed development here that they've shown there, they're anticipating about 275. But we're not, decreasing that number just in, it could be followed by another amendment then to add more residential down the
Right.
road there somehow.
Yeah.
So that's why we're leaving it open then.
Okay.
So we're leaving it open in case they want to come back and put another building in.
They can modify that way too, leaving it open then. So we don't want to remove that density cap that's already there because that's been approved.
Okay.
The 275 is what they indicated to us as a possibility there, so we kind of put that into the agreement then, to kind of show what that parking could look like then.
But if they come back and say, you know what, we're going to put in 300 units, that's the 1.25 is still required. So they
Still
have to
required,
put on
so basically, yeah.
1.25 for the additionals.
I think when we looked at that, basically if you did the 460, I think it comes back to 23 spaces difference then. So it would be,
Yeah.
if they went in the middle there, you'd be somewhere around, in the teens then, so.
Right. Yeah, I thought I heard you say that only one additional drive-through would be allowed
No, one drive-through per property.
per property. Okay, I
Yes.
just want to make sure of that. Okay.
And it would give them the option to. It might not be developed, but it gives the option of the one drive-through. And I think, we kind of put in there too, I think Brendan he's in the audience here, but we kind of put in the staff report there, that was one of the ones that we worked real hard with the developer there to make sure that it was a drive-through, but basically does not appear to have a drive-through, in terms of how the site layout is and how it appears from the front in terms of the architecture of the building then.
Yeah, it was real interesting that that's the property you chose to show a picture of. I thought that was interesting. Anything
know
else,
you-
guys, for Tim? Anybody want to hear from the applicant?
Sure.
Come on up. State your name, address, and go for it.
For the record, Jessica Gow, Cobb Cole Law Firm, 1 Daytona Boulevard in Daytona Beach, Florida. Just a few quick points, and thank you guys for being here tonight. I know you guys made our quorum possible. Mark Watts was going to come over, but I told him to shelter in place and to land, and I live here, so it was easier. Tim always does a great job. I think this is pretty much a cleanup as we shift from the concept plan level to actually engineering design, where we say, oh, that drive aisle doesn't work there, the access configuration and layout. I did just want to hit on a few of the topics raised in questions. On the parking, I think we've talked about the formula being the same as kind of the original approval. At that time, we had less one-bedroom units in the overall mix they were looking at. We're seeing a market shift pretty much across the board where it's one space per bedroom. This is still above that, but that's kind of where the developers are going in terms of what they see working based on the resident feedback. The open space, I did want to note, the park in this iteration gains 0.07 acres, and so it does not decrease, it increased just a tiny bit. The residential is really the only area that lost acreage, and it was sorted through the rest. On the drive-through, I think Tim had a great illustration on page 6, but I will pitch the tale of two Duncans, because I know you mentioned Duncan being an issue, but I think if you look at the Clyde and Big Tree Duncan, that was developed later on. That one has a drive-through in the rear that is very unobtrusive. Jimmy John's has, I think, a dual one right there, and that functions really well, even in the school traffic there where all the students are grabbing their coffee. So I think that's kind of the design concept. And then the mix of parking, the original MDA was phrased, and it's probably on me because I wrote it, where we had 100 surface spaces and 200 garage spaces, which meant that the 300 public parking could be read to require 200 garage spaces, and now we're just saying 300 public spaces. Could be on the street, could be in a parking area, could be in a garage, but we're just keeping it open that there's going to be 300 public. And on the demands, I know we talked about kind of the peak demand being at night for the residential, which is thankfully the off-peak for the commercial kind of experiential retail uses, so those public spaces would then be open. So with that, I'm here for questions. We've got Bobby Ball for any engineering questions as well.
Stan, start with you.
So something you just said that was kind of caught my ear. So you're saying that right now there's probably going to be 200 spaces in the enclosed garage that wraps It's wrapped by the building.
That was what was contemplated in the original concept design in the approved MDA. We're revising it to now just say it can be 300 public spaces across the
Maybe.
site.
So we don't know right
Right.
now, there's
Yep.
nothing that they're willing to stand behind and go, yep, I'm building it like that.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I was kinda asking.
Mhm.
And in concept, in that parking garage structure, some of those would be for the unit tenants, and some would be for the general public. So you could pull in there to go to one of the new bars or something like that.
Mhm.
And if you couldn't find one on the surface, you might get lucky and find one in the structure.
When we went through originally, we talked about how it could be that there was a restricted access if it was structured parking on the
Right.
site, where the residents would have a key card if it went
Right.
up there. I think this shift says it can be surface or garage, just based on what the final engineering layout is, and so that would be the same concept.
All right, that's what I was just trying to figure out is exactly where we were.
Let me follow up on that, because that's not
Yeah.
that's not what Tim said, and it's not what it says in the document here. It says public parking spaces will be provided in the surface parking lots or on street. I took that to mean that they're not going to be in the garage, and that's what Tim said.
In the parking section,
Page 4, first paragraph,
are you looking at the staff report or the document itself?
staff report.
Okay, so you also have the MDA amendment in there, and it just says, a minimum of 300 parking spaces will be set aside for the use by the public. And so, that's the controlling, if we need to clarify, but I think the flexibility is there in the document. It's
So
just-
what I read in the staff report is not accurate, is that what you're saying?
Then, do we wanna clarify? I think that is the intent of the current
Now I gotta
concept
go back
design.
down.
It's just that the agreement is just clarifying that it doesn't have to be garage, which would lend it to being the on-street or
What
other
page of the
areas.
MDA are you looking at?
Page 4.
Page 4,
It's that last sentence in that paragraph.
page 4, number 4.
Page 11 of your PDF there.
Thank you.
And we're just-
The original MDA gave it an option of all three. This one, that basically could be there. This one removed where it could go there. And basically in our discussions of why the MDA was being proposed and that language was being recommended to remove the ability of the garage to have public parking spaces, was the intent was to put them on
Got it.
the surface or the street then. And again, we have plenty of surface parking and street parking too. And one of the issues that we're running into is how do you control who comes in the garage and who goes out of the garage then? So if we can put more surface parking in front of the uses and in the street then, and keep the public parking on the street and the surface, that's a better design probably for a parking garage where you're mixing everyone then.
Yeah.
So
Especially if I'm a tenant, I'm gonna be quite upset if
so
I
basically
don't.
the intent of the change was to make sure that we have it on the surface, sufficient surface parking is basically provided in the parking lots in front of the commercial or behind the commercial then.
Right.
And then the residents would have their own parking garage, which would be easier to control access points.
I think we even
Thank-
talked about this originally, because we said
Yeah.
that you could use the ground level
Right.
of the parking structure would count as, it was surface parking.
For public.
And that the tenants would then just be the ones
Oh,
that
yeah.
would go up the ramp.
There was concerns with how that would work then, and this kind of basically is probably a better setup to kind of have them separated then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the original one says 200 has to be in a garage. That's kind
Right.
of the reading. And so this is saying that's not a restriction.
Okay. That makes
Sorry,
sense.
Stan, go ahead.
No, but, no, that's
just wanted to jump.
that's the issue, because it's like I say, if you're a tenant, you're gonna be a little upset if you can't find a parking space. And, that's the general member of the public, if they can get up in the upper levels and, hey, look at this, I found a place to park, that's gonna cause some conflict at some point in time. So that is one of the things that kinda caught my eye right away, it's like, wait a second, how's that gonna work?
Mhm.
All
But we're
set?
still in the design phase, so they've got time
Yeah.
to work out the exact detail.
Yes.
Scott?
Just to harp on parking, because it seems like it's the subject of the night. Fortunately or unfortunately, I own property in Venetian Bay and New Smyrna Beach. And two observations. The idea of smaller units yielding fewer parking spot sounds great in theory, but it doesn't bear out in practice. And so my observation of two very large apartment complexes built immediately adjacent to one of my offices is that all of the people, when they come in to stay in their apartments at night, spill out and park all along the street.
Sure.
And so all of the street parking is taken up by apartments, and to the point where they would park in the grass if they weren't likely to get towed. That is also considered private property in Venetian Bay there, and the owner of the private property has recently decided that they're going to charge for parking spaces
saw
there
that.
as well. So if the same circumstances apply here, as this is private property, I would like to suggest that we get an applicant guarantee that parking cost will not, at any point while this project is going on, be implemented, because that will immediately put your people in your apartments or your residential use in an inability to find an appropriate amount of parking, especially if we approve 1.25 instead of 1.3.
Yeah, and if you would want to make that a condition, we can talk through that with the applicant and developer. It's really interesting that you talk about the street parking, because we see the same thing. When you talk to Lassiter and some of the transportation groups, they provide information that, based on studies, just driving, individuals think that a parking lot is full when it is at 80% capacity. And so a lot of that too is that parking may be there, it may be on the 4th floor garage or something like that, and they don't want to do the circuit when they know there's an on-street commercial site that's open. So I've definitely seen that, and I just think that 80% statistic is crazy, because whenever we go somewhere now, my husband will say, "There's no parking." I'm like, "Keep going."
Yeah,
And you're fine. Yeah.
I'm just going with, I drive by that almost every day,
Yeah.
5 days a week, sometimes 6 or 7.
Certainly.
Small business. It's an issue, and so I can see that. I think they built theirs on 1.2 because I think that was what was in the PUD originally, and so this is 1.25 is marginally better, but it very definitely is an issue. And I think if you ever got to a place where any of that became paid parking at any point along the continuum, you now have residents who are going, "I'll park in the grass underneath of that tree before I'll pay $3 to park my car."
Right.
It's amazing how money motivated people are.
That it?
That's it.
Good. Mark?
I'm good.
Cool. I'm good too.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jessica.
Pardon me. Any comments from the public? Anyone wish to speak? Robert, come on up. Come on down.
Commission members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive North, Port Orange. With regard to the drive-throughs, Tim said that one per property. And when I looked at the engineering drawings, it showed the arrow going to both these side properties, but also to the main property. And so I'd like some clarification. Are they allowed to put a drive-through in that main Riverwalk property portion? Thank you.
Area here. If that's 1, 2, 3.
Tim, you want to address that? I don't think that.
Good observation.
Well, it's the
I didn't
3
see
are
that.
subject properties, and the drive-in is just
It's listed in the
Yeah.
text of the MDA. They're basically that the Art House property and the Days Pest Control property, what those addresses of the properties are allowed, the ones that could have the one drive-through possibility then. We can check to make sure that there's nothing kind of in the concept plan that an arrow there. But too, and just in general, but essentially, if there is a conflict between the concept plan and the MDA would always take control. So but the MDA states that just those 2 properties have the potential for one drive-through each on each property then.
Yeah.
But again, we'll go ahead and double check the concept plan and make sure there's no errant arrows going to that main parcel there before this goes to council.
Cool. Thanks, Tim. Anybody else from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission here. Guys, you have anything else you want to cover on this? Any ideas?
No.
Yeah, the only thing I have is we all tend to have brought it up is the parking. Yeah, I agree. Granted, 1.3 to 1.25 is not that big a deal, but boy, it can create a real nightmare. It creates a nightmare for the property managers, creates a nightmare for the tenants and the public and the businesses around there too. Everybody gets
I
frustrated.
know the discussion when you look. There's plenty of studies, and I'm sure that back up the idea of 1.2 or 2.5. I get it. I'm just watching it in practice, and I'm seeing what's happened with this spillover. And they may be right that once you get to about 80%, you go, it's full. Let me park on the street. But I know that when I drive home at 10 o'clock at night, every street spot is full, and they're parking on the sidewalks, and they've they're towing cars pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And now with this paid parking, that's another thing that I would really like to suggest that we have a guarantee that that will not be an issue at any point with this project.
Anything else? Assume you're ready to vote. Clerk, if you'd like to call the roll. We have a motion and a second on this case.
Stan Schmidt,
Yes.
Scott Steger,
Yes.
Mark Bowling,
Yes.
Thomas Jordan,
Yes. Passes, what is it, 4? Or is it, I guess? Thank you very much. All right, moving on to case number PRZA-24-0007. It's the First Amendment to Anglers Cove Planned Unit Development Master Development Agreement. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second
Got a motion and a second on the case. Tim, get you again.
Yes. Tim Berman, Community Development. This is the First Amendment to the Angler Cove MDA. Just a kind of reminder where the property is. This is on the other side of the Dunlawton Bridge. Everyone might remember this. Probably about 8 years ago, we did the MDA amendment to create a 5-lot subdivision over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just on the other side. I believe it's Admiralty Club is the condo there then, and there's 5 lots that were created here. Recently, back in early 2023, we had a building permit that was submitted along with the screen enclosure at the same time. When the building permit was issued, it was inadvertently issued with some additional walls on the approved building plans that were going to be included as part of the screen enclosure. One unique concept on this one, this is one that we're starting to see more and more in here in terms of private providers doing the plan review, but then the city staff doing the accessory structure review. In 2023, we're starting to get into that. We have since had a lot more procedures in place to avoid this, but there was basically the plan reviews were essentially done by a private provider, not by our city building staff to review it then. So really what the focus of our city staff is kind of the footprint of the building, making sure setbacks were met and the grades were done properly then. The site plan or the layout plan said walls to be provided by others, but then the building plans which were submitted showed these walls, which were 10-foot walls on the, I believe the south and west side of the deck then. So when our guys looked at the plans for terms of setbacks and stuff like that, everything seemed to be right then. We did not look in the plan review because it was done by a private provider already there for compliance with the Florida Building Code. We have since learned that you check everything even if it's already done by a review. But that one got through. Then when we were out there doing a site inspection here in summer of 2024, I think it was like June or July then, staff was looking at the grades and looked up at the wall and said, this does not look right. So we went ahead and looked at the plans and saw where basically that issue had occurred back in 2023 when we did the plan review then. So what the intent is as you can see here on the aerials here, is that these the wall here, which is on the south side, and the west side here are essentially 10-foot tall walls then, and the screen enclosure will be another 2 foot of a screen wall on top of these walls, and then you have a screen enclosure over the pool then. So what we look to see is basically how does that fit into the definition of a screen enclosure. In the code, a screen enclosure for a pool basically is anything that has at least 60% on each elevation there of open screen. In this case, with the 2 foot of screen being added to the top there, that would only amount to 20% of each elevation having open screen then. So the next step was to look at whether we could do a variance on that requirement. Unfortunately, the screen room definition of LDC contains the open space requirement. You can't do a variance on a definition in the Land Development Code. So that is why we're bringing a MDA amendment forward to essentially create a definition for screen enclosure for this lot only here, which would allow the screen enclosure to have 20% open space on each elevation. In terms of looking at the surrounding properties, in terms of its impact, as you can see to the south, there is a pretty dense vegetation of trees there. That is adjacent to a property that's outside the city of Port Orange, but when you go there and look at it from side to side, you don't see anything past that wall there. So The impact is minimal in terms of visual to the south. To the, I guess it would be to the west of that property is a future lot to be developed there with a single family home. But there is, from the appearance then, there's nothing, you know, different than what you kind of, does not visually appear, you know, out of place when that gets developed along with the potential landscaping that's on there then. So we don't think, basically in terms of approving this MDA amendment, that basically this screen room that would have the 20% open space would be, you know, would not have any, basically ruin any visual characteristics or be really out of place then when you look at kind of the context of this home along with the other home that's built there, and would not impact the future homes that are built in that area then. So staff's recommendation is approval of the MDA amendment.
So they went so far,
well
built
done.
10-foot walls around their pool, and they want a 2-foot screen and enclosure on top of their 10-foot walls.
Right, and again too, since it was a private provider for both plan review and inspection, we were not out there inspecting it either because that's the responsibility of the private provider to do, which the contractor hired there. So when my staff got out there, it was initially when the foundation was going in for the grades, and then we were back for this meeting because, as you can see, they were getting close to being done with the house, and that's when we discovered it. So it's one that work out with the private provider is basically trying to find these errors on there then. But this one, like I said, was one of the first ones we were working with there, and it inadvertently got approved there, and then just kind of snowballed from there.
Okay.
So we're trying to basically resolve the situation, with this amendment here, and based off the surroundings of the property there, this basically something that basically can't be approved because it's not going to impact any of the adjacent neighbors.
So there's two remedies. Approve the amendment or make them tear down the 10-foot walls and put up a regular screen enclosure.
Right, but also got the issue too where I have an approved building permit for those 10-foot walls.
Okay.
Anything else, Mark?
No, that's all I got.
Scott?
Bob Ross would call this a happy little accident.
We had other names for it, but that wasn't.
It doesn't look like it's gonna be obtrusive on anybody else's property. I don't see where it's gonna obstruct anybody's view or anything. And we've discovered a potential flaw without any real consequence, as far as I'm concerned.
And since we have put in place measures to basically make sure that even the private provider that we are looking at the plan reviews, to avoid this situation.
I think it's great that we discovered it when it's not a huge.
Yep.
Yeah, that's.
Oh my
that's
God,
a
you
real
built what?
thing,
Yeah, it could be in a worse location. We'll put it that way.
yeah. Right.
But
Anything else, Scott?
You've crafted
No,
this, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Stan.
So you've crafted this so that it is just this lot.
Correct.
Because that's the thing you can see next is the next guy goes, hey, I want one just like my neighbor has. Well, you can't do that without going.
They have the right to
again.
apply for an MDA amendment.
Coming
Right.
back
Yeah.
to us,
Yeah.
Which then you discourage them with the cost. That's the only thing I see on this thing. You hate to do these one-offs,
Yeah.
but we kind of worked ourselves into a corner on this thing. So here we are.
What's the reasoning behind the 60% minimum? Is there safety reasons? Is there wind, anything like that?
For screen enclosures or screen rooms, you could have reduced setbacks then. So basically, a screen enclosure setback is 15 feet, where your single-family home structure itself, there might be 25 feet then. So the screen enclosure, I think, is it's not living space. So they, and more kind of extension of your backyard then. So they provide those with that. I think that requirement there, the 60% is what they feel comfortable. It won't become living space
Right.
on there then. So that's where that came
Too
from.
much screen.
On the on that one, there's always fun doing those measurement calculations for people, but that's where that kind of came from in our definition, and that's kind of like I said, if we try to go the easiest route possible to try to remedy the situation, it just kept on snowballing, and
Right.
here we are.
Got it. Makes sense why it's in the LDC, not available for a variance then. Good, thanks. Anything else for Tim? Is the applicant here tonight?
We are the applicant on this one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back and look. Gotcha. Now I
yes.
got it.
Yeah.
So
Now I got it.
So you got anything?
So what do you got to say?
I agree with what staff said.
I agree with staff.
All righty. Well, then we're all set. How about opening this up to the public? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this? Yes, sir, come on up. State your name and your address, please.
Dan Malgall, 200 Point Sienna, Port Orange. What is that setback on that property? Since they built it as a property, did they go to that 25 foot or do they only have 15?
There's
screen enclosure?
the let me probably better have the PowerPoint here. This setback in the MDA, we had established the rear yard setback was going to be 20 feet then, and this structure is set back 15 feet then. So there's only a 5 foot difference on that one then.
So they were taking advantage of the screen enclosure rule.
Yeah, basically the screen enclosure. I mean, if they reduced down and got that 60%, that could be located at that location then on that.
So they
setback
move the
fence.
walls shorter and put more screen
Yeah.
in.
Or the other option, if they would have moved the 5 foot closer in there, that wall could have stayed at that location there. So the visual aspect is not really changed there from what could have been just 5 feet further away from the property line then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. Anybody have any other comments, ideas? No? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you call the roll for us, please.
Stan Schmidt,
Yes.
Scott Steger,
Yes.
Mark Bowling,
Yes.
Thomas Jordan.
Yes. Passes. All right, moving on to last item here. This is a land development code amendment for case number DCAM-24-0001, amendments to the land development code. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of case number DCAM-24-0001.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Hey, look who's up, Tim.
Yeah. Tim Berman, Community
Oh, he's
Development.
got his glasses on now.
Yeah, because I got 11 font here. So this is something that we've been doing throughout the past probably 10 years now, is essentially clean up items in the code as they kind of pop up and appear. This one kind of related to some recent code amendments that we did on the impact fees, and we started kind of working a little bit into this there and noticed that there were some text language that was conflicting with the new ordinance that we approved for the impact fees. And so so the first amendment is to kind of clarify that and make sure that the references in terms of what impact fees could be deferred to CO and how they are called properly, and to add the correct impact fees are added there, and also remove some references to Volusia County impact ordinances just in case they change their chapter numbers there. Our ordinance is correct by just referring to the Volusia County then. So that was the first amendment. The second amendment is one that we have basically for the past couple years now, the developments that have occurred in mainly the Riverwalk area and the Down Under area, and also Eastport too. We've been bringing forward, and has been more acceptable there and have been approved, economic incentive agreements which have included waiving development fees and building permit fees for projects that are built there that are targeted businesses. For Eastport, it was the Be Strong facility, which is a manufacturer of outdoor equipment, which is getting ready to go under construction here soon. In the Riverwalk area, it was the Olson Homes main office building, and the some of the recent ones there. However, when we started looking back, that there were a number of projects that were kind of the ones that set the tone to basically come into that area and redevelop. And at that time, kind of using the economic incentive agreement was not used quite as much then, or advertised being used then. And a lot of these projects basically have gone in since then and have been kind of the projects that have set the tone for future redevelopment in there then. So what this amendment would also do would be allow projects that have been developed over the past, I believe, 5 years to request that. Still has to go through City Council for approval and meet all the requirements to make the request, and City Council is the one that ultimately decide whether to approve or deny it, but it gives them the right to apply for it then. Also too, it requires that that business that got the CO is still in business moving forward then, so we know it's successful then. So this would apply only to those targeted businesses within the Port Orange Town Center CRA or the Eastport CRA, not outside the there is not outside the CRA. Again, it's more of a targeted for developments there. And the hope is that some of the developers that have developed projects there, basically they can apply for this and get this in, possibly do redevelopment on their site or redevelopment within those CRAs for more projects in, since they've been able to do them successfully. So staff is recommending approval of the cleanup item, and I'm here for any questions.
Cool. Mark?
No, I agree with all of it.
Good. Scott?
I think it's great. A couple of easy questions. Is there a negative economic impact on the city in any way by extending this? Do you see a larger number of applications, and do you feel it's offset by the benefit of them applying?
We look at
and
basically, I
building?
feel that basically the, what we're giving back there is benefit, the benefit is basically getting those properties redeveloped in the CRA, improving the tax base, and basically kind of getting that area, you know, up and redeveloped there. So we see, you know, by having to reduce or waive building permit fees, we see the benefit and pace of the project that gets built there and the impact it has.
Okay. And it's budgeted for anyway, so it's not an
We
increase
anticipated
in
that,
budget.
yes. And again,
Would
it
it
is
apply to
limited
future CRAs?
What's that?
Would this apply to future CRAs as well? For
These will be our only two
This is it?
CRAs,
Okay.
that, yes.
Great, all right.
Yeah.
That's all for me.
Stan?
No, I don't see anything here either, other than how many Fortune 500 companies are knocking on the door to put their headquarters up there.
No.
Tim, that was the question I had was, 6 years seemed like a lot of time, but it now makes sense. You're gonna go back and cover some of the folks that are already there. But as you said, it has to be the initial CO.
Business.
It
that-
can't,
right.
business, yeah. It
Can't be like the third time over there then, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
I think, again, the code said 1 year, so that's where we added 5 years to it then, which we've got 6 then, so that's
Yeah.
where we got that number then.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good. Thank you. Anything from the public, seeing as I figured out who the applicant is on this one? No? No. Nobody from the public wishes to speak? All right. Anything else from the commission on this one? So we're ready to vote. Go ahead and call the roll for me.
Stan Schmidt,
Yes.
Scott Steger,
Yes.
Mark Bowling,
Yes.
Thomas Jordan.
Yes, passes 4-0. Moving on to other business, commissioner comments. Anybody have any comments?
Looks like the storm is equal to Tampa or so and moving north, and maybe we've seen the worst of it or just a little more wind. So yay.
Yay.
That's all I got.
Hopefully next month we have a meeting, so we have reason to be here.
And my apologies
great.
for running through I was sitting in the parking lot. For some reason, I had 6 in my head, so my fault.
You thought you were early.
I was literally sitting there going, nobody's here. Did they decide to cancel and not tell me?
And you didn't bring donuts.
I didn't. I was
Oh,
eating
what?
cardboard pizza from 7-Eleven in my Jeep. So it was,
Yeah.
you didn't
Yeah.
want that. Trust me, I didn't want it.
Nothing else? Staff comments. Tim, ooh.
Uh-oh.
Something to say.
Doesn't have his glasses on, so
If you want to remind Stan, or that basically that next month is Pumpkin Bread Month. So I just want to put that on the record.
I felt like that was coming.
It's gotta be after the 16th.
That's it. All right, well
That's the tax
said.
deadline.
Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you very much.